Hey guys, welcome to another episode of R-Rated Christianity. Nico and Saulo, he's going to be subbing in today. We're doing a little bit of an audible. We had planned to do an episode with me and Davi and us talking about marriage and working through difficult season in marriage, not with ourselves, thank God, and we can talk more about that, but just with our situation, with, obviously being married to someone who's in politics, having a son who's on the spectrum of autism, having 3 other children on top of that. How do you balance that out? How do you deal with frustrations? What when circumstances come up? How do you deal with lies? all the different crap that we've had to deal with in our marriage that, thank God, is not between us, but in our circumstances. And so there's different situations you deal with. There's issues between couples, and then there's circumstances. And many times the circumstances affect the couple. And so we were going to talk about that. But because of our circumstances,
because of the topic at hand,
that's right. Because of our children, and things happening with Michael and kids, and not having help at this season right now at the house to watch the kids tonight, and things happening with us. Davi has to stay home, and her first priority is to be a mommy outside of being a wife, and not being on a podcast is not the number one for her. So she's doing her motherly duties. And to our family, she's there with the kids. So Saulo's Davi tonight.
Oh my God. Hi, guys.
First of all, Davi does not talk like that. I don't know where the hell you got that shit
That's
from.
all I can do, bro. That's all I can do today. Sorry.
My wife all of a sudden is a white chick from California. But
hey, wait a minute. The other day, I understand it's hard to offend me, but the other day you said,
what did I say? I offended you?
No, no, it's hard to offend. But you said you said something like I was gonna imitate Saulo, but I can't do it. I don't know if he gets offended. Have you tried to imitate me?
No, I haven't.
Are you sure?
No, hold on. Let me think about that. Hold on. I might have done an imitation.
Let's try it. I want to hear it. Because Charlie makes fun of me.
No, hold on.
Okay, here we go.
So something happened. What'd you say? Say that again. Damn! Was that pretty good? Damn!
Charlie makes fun of me too. Hold on.
Say it again. Damn!
Wow.
And you talk Spanish real fast.
Thank you.
Tell people to share. Do your thing for the podcast stuff.
Guys, if you saw the headline on this podcast today. You want advice on how to be a better lover? That's what we're talking about. And maybe you're the one that needs advice. Maybe you know somebody that needs advice. Maybe you have some friends that need advice. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to give you advice on how to be a better lover. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So we ask you, share this podcast. We're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. So just look for R-Rated Christianity on Facebook and YouTube. But please help us like the page, like it up, heart it up. Share it, create a watch party, and we want you, very important, please get involved with the conversation. We thank God for Nico and his experience and his willingness to share, and George and other people. But honestly, we want this to be a conversation. If social media can be a very horrible place, let us use it as a good tool of conversation. So whatever Nico says, I say, you have an opinion on what we're going to talk about, please feel free to make a comment. You have a question, you have a concern, please let us know. But today's topic, advice on being a better lover.
Why you have to say it like that?
Dang! I was going to put some music like Barry White.
Yeah, sure. Chicken wing. No, but
wow.
Damn! No, but all joking aside, yeah, thank you for that. We're at a stage in R-Rated Christianity. We've been doing this. It's been at least almost 3 months coming up on.
Man, crazy.
And it's been a blessing, and I hope you've benefited from the conversations. Because ultimately, like I said, we're trying to talk to people of the Christian worldview and making sure that you can practically live out the biblical worldview and our faith. I mean, it's one thing to study it. It's one thing to repeat some scriptures and have a bunch of sound bites. But it's another thing to believe it and be convinced so much of a biblical worldview that you actually live it out. And not just when you're behind the pulpit or behind a camera or in front of people, but when you're by yourself, 1 to 1,000 people, you should act the same. That's what really God expects of us. And to understand the biblical worldview will help you be convinced of it and ultimately live it out. So we've been talking about marriage, family. We've had some great conversations. The professor, George, has brought the theological and the deep dive into it at times, and we might be with us next week. We're going to see. But this week was supposed to be a practical application and how you deal with the shitstorms in life and the or caca if you want to make it PG. But and then the circumstances can affect the relationship in the couple. And you thought of something, and I'm going to talk about Davi and I and our journey together and some of the challenges we face from being very public in a public couple, which brings challenges, to people lying about you, to people talking about you, to be in the political arena, and how a spouse deals with that. Knowing the truth about your spouse, meaning the good stuff, and knowing that not everybody, that certain people in these dish rag magazines out there that write a bunch of bullshit, and how she dealt with it. I really wanted to give that perspective. Then us as a couple, dealing with a special needs child, dealing with the dynamics and how that affects the other children, and how do you bring consistency, and how important is that spiritual walk and that relationship with Christ, because you don't want to take it out on each other, and that happens so many other times. Because in a family that has a child on the spectrum of autism, I've said this before, there's an 85% divorce rate. It's very stressful, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Many times that autism or any special needs you deal with or situation becomes your identity. And that can be in other circumstances. It doesn't have to just be with a child on the spectrum. But what is your identity in your relationship? And for a Christian, it should be Christ and reflecting Christ. And we talked about that last week. Ephesians 5, 1 Peter 3, Genesis. We talked about Deuteronomy, about the commitment and the duties of a spouse, a biblically minded husband, what that means to be a servant leader, leading the family versus running the home. We went over all these topics. And then you have to talk about the shitstorms and the challenges, and how do you love your spouse, and how do you become a better lover?
I remember years ago, I went to a conference, and I met Benny Tate. Benny Tate used to be an advisor or a part of one of the past presidents, right? And he said, one day I gave a sermon about me having breakfast with the president, right? He says, and after the sermon, I didn't talk to a lot of people. There wasn't much to talk about, he says, because a lot of people didn't identify with me because they don't do that, right? They're not eating breakfast with the president. He says, but the next Sunday, I preached on me trying to get to church and my wife saying something about my tie. And then we get into an argument about my tie heading to church. And then he says, and if you guys want to talk about it, so after service, a lot of guys approached him. Hey, Pastor, how do you address those aspects? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times they see leaders and they're like, oh man, they're perfect. But no, sometimes you really have to talk. There's a phrase you say, you talk out of hunger.
I preach out of hunger.
You preach out of hunger. And why? Because there's this hunger to get better. And I think those men approached that man because they were hungry too. They're like, I want to be a better husband. I want to be better. But how does that work when you're in the middle of, he was going to church. He says, I was going to church. And my wife said something about my red tie. And I exploded and it got horrible. And anyway, so thank you for your willingness to share, mostly.
Thank you.
Because anyway, but anyway, that's what we wanted to do. So when me and Nico were talking on a little while ago.
How do we do an audible? I mean, obviously he's not Davi.
No.
I mean, and how do we bring that type of realistic dynamic to the show to where you can benefit from it? And obviously, God willing, we'll get Davi back on here because I think you'll really benefit from just hearing her journey with Christ and her spiritual growth and breakthrough, and how she deals with a crazy husband that puts himself out there and essentially puts the family out there, and us working together. And when I said this last week, and somebody made a comment, a friend of ours, Raul, was talking about this. I wasn't bullshitting. I mean, Davi and I don't argue. And it's not because of me, it's because of my commitment to Christ and our commitment to each other and the example we want to show. We've had some intense conversations. It's a stressful home when you have a child that can have a meltdown in the drop of a hat, and it's just challenges of dealing with the emotional stability and making time for each other and getting caught up in all those things. But we really don't argue. And it's because of our commitment to a biblical worldview. Now, that doesn't mean if you argue that's bad, you're a shitty Christian. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying, for me, someone who argues for a living, I go out of my way to make sure that I don't bring that that perspective or that skill set that I use to represent my
bring
clients.
your ability to argue.
Right.
I
hope I'm pretty good at it. But what I'm saying is I don't want to use that skill against my wife.
Got it.
Because the way I look at it, I would be using that skill against myself.
Yeah, got it.
Sorry.
No,
it's okay. Against myself.
Gotcha.
So, because we are one flesh, we're one body, Davi and I, and if I believe that, if I'm truly convinced of that, why would I harm myself and bring that against myself when we're supposed to be one?
So we want to thank everybody that's logged on. Dr. Arturo Bonilla, thank you for logging on, Dr. Arturo. We'll talk later. We'll talk about Brian Snyder from Eagle Pass. We want to thank Aaron Reese for watching. Kelly, thank you very much. Gina's always sharing those funny memes. Gina, please, if you have any funny relationship memes, that'd be awesome. So Eric Olivares, John Diego Vaca. Hey, happy birthday, Jose Espinosa says. Happy belated birthday.
16th. 47.
He turned 47, está chiquito. Carolina Macías, thank you, Samuel. How you doing, Samuel? Thank you for all you do. Isabel Rodriguez, Adam is watching. Marta, Pete, hey, Nico, good to see you on here, my man. Keep up the good work. Daniel Sandoval.
Thank you, Daddy.
All right, so thank you for logging on. So today we're going to talk about something, and I don't know if I told you enough, but we're going to talk about how to be a better lover. I just have to say it like that. How to be a better lover. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Gary Chapman, some years ago, wrote a bestseller. Yeah. And he called it The 5 Love Languages. Yeah. And what we were trying to talk about is because our first most important relationship is God, right?
Absolutely.
And we were saying, like, some people want to serve God, and if somebody asks you, hey, how do I serve God better? Where do you send them? If somebody wants to serve God better or please God, where do you send them? To the Bible.
Well, you're right. Yeah. To understand, well, you can't please someone that you don't understand.
Exactly.
Right?
Totally. And to understand him, you go to the Bible because that's his love letter, the rule book. Let's put it say it for now.
Owner's manual.
That's the rule book, the owner's manual. So you say, okay, God likes this. God doesn't like this. God likes this. So you try to do based on that the love letter. You're like, okay, my God likes this and doesn't like this, because a lot of people just want just tell me good things about me.
Right.
Yeah. There's that, but there's also some areas of God doesn't like this areas, right? So that's between you and God.
And there's areas that He hates.
Oh my goodness, got it.
We'll talk about that.
And we'll talk about that. But then, so how to apply to a relationship? So you come into a relationship, and most of us think we know the other person. But I think it's beautiful when you see old couples that they're together for years and they're still figuring out some stuff or trying to, I didn't know that you like peanut butter, right? Just things like that. Why? Because that comes through communication, trying to find out what the person likes and doesn't like. So Gary Chapman wrote a book that says, okay, I'm going to give you kind of a guidance on how to figure out some stuff. So all of us have ways that we show love and ways we receive love. Right? So Gary Chapman, bring it up on the screen, Charlie, just if you want to hear about it. But this is the book, 5 Love Languages. There's 5 love languages, 5 ways to express love and how to receive love. You have that, your spouse has that. So for example, there's ways that there's 5 of them. Words of affirmation, right. Receiving gifts, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. If you analyze this, you have a percentage of it, but you're more pronounced in one area in regards to how you give love and how you receive love. For example, if I were to check Tyler, I'm doing a live test right now. Tyler, if I want to know about Tyler receives love. How do you think Tyler receives love? If I were to analyze Tyler.
I don't know. I don't love Tyler. I'm just I love you, brother. I love
Nick,
you.
No,
I love him.
I don't know. I think it's words of affirmation. I think words of affirmation.
Well, I mean, also I would say quality time. But everybody's different. You have to know the person. I mean,
exactly.
Most men are going to think that physical touch is how men.
We're
physical.
Exactly.
I mean, most men are more sexual. That's what they think.
What they think.
But everybody's different.
But it's analyzing the inner essence of finding what love is.
But what a couple needs to understand is the way that the one spouse receives it might be different than the other
completely.
One. And so you have to know, and that's where the compromise
that's the problem is.
For our marriage, and these guys are my witnesses.
Yeah, he did it right now. It's awesome.
We did a test right before we went on air, and I called my wife. I said, Chula, I'm gonna tell me if I'm right. Here are the 5 love languages, and I'm gonna pick yours in order. And she goes, okay, Chulo, what are they? And I told her what they are. And for her, I said, for you, my angel, it's quality time.
She receives.
That's it. She wants quality time. This is how she receives it.
Yeah.
She wants quality time, then acts of service, then words of affirmation, then physical touch, then receiving gifts. And she goes, pretty good, Chulo. That's really good.
And what about you? Yeah, what about you?
And for me, I mean, for me, I really, you know what? For me, it's
because you're unique. I'm joking.
you start that shit again. No, I mean, for me, it's I think acts of service. Because if that's Davi's way of giving it.
Yeah.
And I receive it that way because she always sacrifices for us.
Yeah.
I mean, she's always serving our family, and
Yeah.
so she has almost trained me to receive her love that way.
Yeah.
And that's, which is beautiful. I'm not a gift. I don't give a crap about gifts. I really don't. And thank God she doesn't either. I mean, she appreciates them, but
most women would argue that that's their love language.
well, that's fine. I mean, but for Davi, it's quality time. Now, that means something to her.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean just sitting around picking your ass. I mean, that means something to Davi. That could mean she loves going to the beach or driving out to Green, Texas or something. She doesn't care.
But
just
it's quality time.
walk somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at her, my phone, put the phone down, that type of deal. That's what Davi appreciates. Even if I'm in the kitchen with her, helping her cut food and we're spending time together, or I'm helping her clean. I mean, that's quality time for her. We're doing this together. And then acts of service, if I'm doing something, like I'll wash the dishes for her, and she'll just so much appreciate that. And I do the best job I can. And then she goes down from there. Words of affirmation, I'm always doing that. That's for me. I give love by affirming people through words. Yeah. I'm a litigator. I use my words to defend clients and to promulgate a position. And so words are a powerful tool for me. And that's how I give love by affirmation.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna talk about it a little bit because some people have never thought about this. But also, I'll tell you something. For example, Pam McCarty says, "Epic book." Can I brag a little bit?
Sure, you can.
On Saturday, we're heading to Maui, Hawaii, for a 1-week seminar with Gary Chapman about that book. Anyway, the whole week because I got a lot to learn. Anyway, so I'm gonna ask you, if you've never done this, try to analyze yourself. Try to analyze yourself and say, you know what? Analyze your spouse. Because sometimes we don't do that, Nico. You know, sometimes, like, for example, in a relationship with God, I'm like, God, just give me, fix me, do this for me. And we never see the other side, like, God, what do I need to do? What do I need to change? What do I need to fix? And I think that's something that we are weak in sometimes in our relationship with God. We're not asking the other question, what's my responsibility?
Well, the biblical principle there, just to make sure we understand that we can, because it all comes together, is humility.
Yeah.
For you to ask these questions, and George and I talked about this, I think it was 2 episodes ago. It's not about asking your spouse, how can I love you more? Think about that.
Yeah.
Doing something more that's not good, meaning bad, doesn't make it better. It just makes it either worse or stale or stalemate. How can I love you better? That's the question to ask.
I love it. Check this out. Scott Maloof says, great book, Maloof, on getting to learn how to relate with people and understand them. Good talk. Check out Michelle, what she says. I read this book years ago.
She works with me.
It was so informative and made such a difference in my marriage. Mike and I speak different languages, so compromise and understanding are our translators.
That's great, Michelle.
Dang,
that's awesome.
That's intense.
Run.
So let me tell you something. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go over them just a little bit, and start thinking. And if you can be honest with us and say, you know what, in regards to me, I give love like this and I receive love like this. So for example, Charlie, give the first one, words of affirmation, right? First one, words of affirmation, right? How do you communicate words of affirmation? You encourage.
That's right.
You affirm, you appreciate, empathize, and listen actively.
Okay, well now let's break that down.
Yeah.
So what does encourage mean?
Yeah.
Encourage doesn't mean tell somebody. Well, it doesn't mean tell somebody they're doing well when they're not doing well.
Exactly.
So that's where the world comes in and bastardizes our definition of encourage or love.
Yeah.
If you love me, you will encourage, support anything I do. Well, that's not communicating love if it's not biblical love or biblical truth. So again, remember, we're using the lenses. We have this biblical LASIK surgery, and we're looking through the lenses of a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
So it's to encourage people when they're doing something right. Affirm them, saying, "Hey, you're doing something well. Good job." Not letting them just kind of drift off by themselves. Always telling someone, "Hey, good job." When Maya does something well, our oldest daughter, and I didn't have to ask her, without her asking, without her looking for attention, I go out of my way and say, my angel, great job. That's exactly what I want. And that's what mommy wants, and Jesus is happy.
And
that's affirmation. Appreciation is thank you. 13 years of marriage, every time Davi either cooks, makes something, does something for me, irons a shirt or whatever, I always say thank you, my angel, thank you, chula, whatever it is, mi amor. I say thank you, thank you, thank you. I still open the door for her. I let her walk first. I was raised that way. That's the way I was. Empathize. So even if something doesn't matter to you, But you know, I keep it.
No,
See,
okay.
this guy's
He's
trying to be like,
aggressive. He's aggressive. You see
I'm
it in the
aggressive.
film.
I'm banging
Yeah.
this. And supposedly it's making all kinds of noise. This guy's a ball buster. Okay, but he's just doing that to make sure we don't make noise and distractions. But it's empathizing, knowing what matters to your spouse. And then even if it doesn't matter to you as much, you just
Step
give
into
that
it.
at times.
You step into it.
Exactly. Meet
Yeah.
them where they're at. And then listen actively. What does that mean? That doesn't mean this. And look away. I mean, it's engaging them,
Yeah.
acknowledging
Yeah.
little by little as they're talking
Yeah.
that you're following with them. So active listening is a skill. I mean, it's not hearing, it's listening, but then active listening. And we don't want to do a whole show on active listening.
Let me
but
say
it's a
something in
skill.
regards to that, because we've got into this world of people having one-night stands with good thoughts.
Say that again.
We live in a world where people are having one-night stands with good thoughts, and let me explain that. Because a lot of people, they see a meme or a phrase, and they're like, "Oh man, like they go to church. Oh man, that was a good word. Did you do anything about it? No, but it was good. I listened to it, and I had a good one-night stand with, but it doesn't produce anything.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're in a world that we love learning, and a lot of people, oh man, I learned this today, and I learned this today. Well, have you applied it? No. So as we learn this, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to encourage you, learn it, and say, how can I apply it? And how can, you know what I mean? So how can I apply it? So be thinking on how you can apply it to somebody, or how you can apply it to your husband. So
even just a nugget, though.
A nugget,
you
yeah.
You go to a seminar, you don't have to walk away and be able to teach the seminar.
Yeah.
Even if you can just apply a nugget,
Yeah.
it can make a difference.
yeah,
It's a
so
seed.
words of affirmation, actions to take. This is our advice. Send an unexpected note, a text, or a card. Think about it. Have you ever done that? Just think about it. Encourage genuinely and often. I say this, you know what's the best currency today? Is encouragement. Use it often. That's an amazing and powerful currency. Encouraging people, like you do with your wife. It's amazing. You could be having a bad week, but 1 second of, that was awesome, can turn the whole inside out. You know what I mean? So try to do that. And things to avoid, because there's also the contraparte. I don't know how to say it in English.
The counterpart.
Yeah, the counterpart. Non-constructive criticism. Not recognizing or appreciating effort. Dang, words of affirmation.
Non-constructive criticism, and we trick ourselves, or we want an out. We like to criticize people, and we call it constructive. I remember when people religious people or whatever, I used to defend Jesus and get all pissed off, and I would jack up the whole deal. But I had good intentions. In my mind, I'm making a correction, but I'm really, it's just an example of arrogance. And so when it says non-constructive criticism, you have to say, okay, if I'm going to correct, instruct, quote unquote, criticize is a bad word these days. If I'm going to criticize somebody, why am I doing it? Check your heart.
Yeah.
And what is my goal?
Yeah.
I always tell people, why are you doing it? Check your heart, and what is your goal? My goal is to make myself feel better because I corrected somebody. Well, then you're full of shit. You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
That is not loving someone else.
A lot of people hide behind, well, I just tell it like it is.
Yeah,
and they hide behind it, and I just tell it like it is. And like there's a good feeling of like they feel superior that I can identify what's wrong. You know what the problem is? A lot of people go like, you know what the problem is? I tell it like it is. And sometimes you need, like you said, you need to check your heart. Where is that coming from?
Yep. Check your heart, and what are you trying to accomplish?
Exactly. So that is words of affirmation. Now, as you analyze this, does your spouse receive love through words of affirmation? Okay, go next one, Charlie. Next is receiving gifts. How to communicate if your wife or husband or spouse or significant other receives love through that. Thoughtfulness. Make your spouse a priority. Speak purposefully. Okay? Actions to take. Give thoughtful gifts and gestures. Small things matter in a big way. Express gratitude when receiving a gift. And things to avoid. Forgetting special occasions. Unenthusiastic gift giving. Dang.
Receiving.
Oh, receiving, I'm sorry.
Or giving.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Babe, these are the best used socks I've ever gotten in my life.
Used socks with holes in them. No, but and here's the deal. Every couple should understand the definition of gift.
Yeah.
What's a gift? I mean, to my wife, the gift is quality time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. To my wife, a gift would be a trip somewhere that's just meaningful. It doesn't have to be extravagant, and we can drive to Corpus. I mean, I take her to Poteet, she's happy as hell. I mean, it's just that quality time. A gift from my wife, because she grew up in Mexico, where as hard as my suegro, my father-in-law, worked, they came home and they ate dinner. And so Davi, even when I was campaigning, and I was horrible at this, and so I confess, I was really bad at this. And that's why she's really happy that I'm out of the public eye, or at least out of politics for this season, at least. I mean, I was never home for dinner.
Gotcha.
And she's like, Chulo, can we please once a week have dinner together? Sit down and have dinner together. We pray in the morning together. We bless our children. We go to church on Saturday nights usually. We do a lot of things together. But to her, it meant, now me growing up, we never had dinner together.
Yeah.
My pop was here, my brother and I.
Crazy,
I
right?
literally.
So adjusting to that. So what the lady said,
Well,
adjusting to
and I sucked at it for years. Okay, but we sat down, and this is not a shot against my parents. It was just the way it went. For Thanksgiving and Christmas, we never traveled. One year we traveled when I was in 6th grade. I think I was in 6th grade, and Mike was in 8th grade. But that was it. But for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we sat down and we had our lunch, and then together, and that was it. That was done. And we didn't travel anywhere. We didn't have it. We here at home, and that's why I don't like to travel during Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Wow.
But I was crappy about dinner, and I'm hoping to get even better. But for Davi, that means a lot to sit down. As much as she works hard to serve us and to treat us to a wonderful meal, all she asks is for us to sit down and eat. And for me, at the very least, what I got better at as time went on, I got better at saying, Chula, I am really sorry that I suck at this. I'm shitty at this dinner thing. But I acknowledge that I'm shitty, and I admit it enthusiastically. I mean, I was sincere about it. I appreciated the fact that she wanted to just break bread together in fellowship. Well, how was the day? How's homework? What's going on with everybody? And so that's little baby steps. Was I better overnight? No, but I sincerely acknowledge that I suck.
And that's the purpose. As you learn a concept, apply it, right? That's a challenge. Gina Evans, she didn't share a meme today, but she says, love is not self-seeking. We should seek first to please our spouse in the way they need us to. That takes humility, strategy. It can seem like a difficult task sometimes, but they are worth your all. That's where your fulfillment in the relationship will come from. Loving them in their love language, not your own. Your spouse doesn't receive love the way that you do a lot of times. We've got to stop assuming that we like to receive in what they want to. Take the time and get to know who you're married to, and you will reap benefits galore.
But first of all, and I'm going to say this lovingly, I mean, as someone that is a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, we want to love Christ first.
Yeah.
And then Christ says, thank you. Let me cleanse and detox your love, because your definition of love sucks, because it's wrapped in this stuff called flesh. So let me cleanse it, detox it for you, and then now go love your spouse. So you appreciate your spouse the way I appreciate you.
Yeah. Anyway, Robert, Melissa, thank you for that nice catch, Melissa. Robert, Melissa. And look at that nice catch.
This season?
Yeah, that phrase you said. But anyway, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, the next love language. All right, quality time. We're kind of talking about it. How to communicate if you receive love with quality time or your significant other.
Oh, that's big.
How to communicate. Uninterrupted and focused conversation.